Here we go. We're here with Anthony De Souza and one of my awesome clients. Like, this guy is on point. He's so badass with his task. He's like getting 100% every single week on the weekly leaderboard based on like how many tasks they perform. And he is killing it. And today is a interview or like a case study to see how far Anthony has come since the beginning of this year. So he had a goal for himself for New Year's, and he stuck to it. Did you know you're like in the top 10% of the world? Because many everyone who starts a New Year's resolution, they 80% or even 90%, close to 90%, they fail. Like by March, they stop. And then it's April already. Look at you. You're this is awesome, man. Okay, let's just get into it because the whole purpose of this call is for you to inspire others as well. Because as your coach, I'm telling you, you've come a very, very long way, and I'm proud of you. So let's get into it. Just introduce yourself, a little bit of background about yourself. What do you do with business, and so on.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Anthony. I'm 34. I'm currently an IT director for an insurance company. We're a small company, only less than 200 employees, but we work hard, and we're really trying to expand and grow in the next couple of years. And a lot of that roadmap belongs to me and my department to really get us there. So I've definitely been moving the dial in the right direction for myself professionally, and I feel very established in that. And really, for a long time, I've been wanting to, work on my personal side of my life, because I put so much effort into that professional life and, got myself to a point where I'm really happy where I am. And now I think it's time to really give my personal side of my life that attention it needs. And health and fitness was one of the first areas I really wanted to tackle because I've been putting it off for quite some time. Um, you know, um, uh, I used to definitely struggle with my weight, a lot of fluctuations, a lot of trying different diets or trends or things without really a good background knowledge. I could do my own research, but I'm never sure what would work, and I'd get frustrated and fall off and not stick with it. So it on my own it was kind of difficult, so I'd have some small wins, and then I'd go through stretches where I didn't commit to it fully, so really struggled with that, and also struggled with parts of my life where I had been diagnosed with diabetes, and that was something where partially genetics from family that you can't change some of that, but it's some of it is my own fault, and I take ownership of that, because I let it go. So really, I wanted to put an emphasis on not being on a ton of medication when I get older. I watch family members and things like that, and they are taking 15 pills a day, and I just don't want that to be my life. So this year I said, you know what, time to make a change. You've done so much work in your professional life. Why don't you apply that ambition to your health?
Yeah.
So I really decided to make that change. That was when I decided I got to do this for me.
Nice. Awesome introduction, man. And you're on the right path, and you're on the fastest path because of how well you're able to maintain the consistency of doing the tasks that you need to do, the working out, eating right, doing all the habits that integrate into your lifestyle. And 4 months later, everything seems automatic for you. Like we spoke last week about this, and
Yeah.
that's what it's about. It's about creating a new lifestyle. And
Yeah.
I want to unpack what you said earlier about letting it go. Like when you knew that you had to do something, but you were like, kind of like, it's okay, I'll let it go. So
Mm-hmm.
let's unpack that a little bit. Like, what does that, what at that moment, what would be the typical thing that the previous Anthony would do?
I think what would happen is, especially because of work,
Mm.
I would say this is more important. And I'd say, you know what? I didn't prep anything this week. I can just order something to eat. And I'm not tracking any calories, any macros, anything that helps me now, So I wasn't doing that work. So even if I was eating healthy for a 2 week stretch, you know, a big project would come up and I'd say, you know what, I could put all that on the back burner. Let me focus on this. Or I'd do it for so long and I'd look at the scale and not see maybe the progress I wanted. And that kind of self defeat, I'd be like, you know what? It doesn't matter anyway. But it does matter, and there are ways to get where you need to go. And I think for me, the biggest thing was learning that I think because work, I've established myself so well and I'm an expert in what I do. I forgot that you don't become an expert in everything overnight. So I had to ask for help, which is why I joined the program, and I had to figure out ways to make it work because it's just as important to focus on your health. That's something that's lifelong. So I want to make sure that I'm taking care of it for the rest of my life.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. That's exactly like you hit the nail on the head with that one. With like main struggles. So I know we just spoke about like, you would put it off because you had like a big project coming up, you would put it off. But was there anything more than that? Like how would you feel after that point where you put it off?
Put it off. I wouldn't feel great about myself, and I'd I've talked about it with you, I think, before, where even going to the gym and things like that, that wasn't anything I would consider, like 5 months ago. I was nervous. I was a little self-conscious about that. So I kind of
How
created
did you
those
break
barriers.
through, how did you break through that? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, the breakthrough with that was I had to push myself really outside the comfort zone, because it's easy to say I'm uncomfortable doing it, and say, well, you don't have to do it because you're uncomfortable. But, you know, I baby stepped it, I started with walks and incorporating that, getting a little bit more active with the walks. And then I just decided, let me go the first day, because that's what I thought in my head. Let me go the first day. If I hate it, I figured I would talk to you and say, I can't do this. But I
Mhm.
said, give it a chance. And I went and surprise, surprise, nothing crazy happened. I went in, I had a plan that you and I worked on, and I went through that. I experimented with the weights and the using the equipment. And I did the first day and I said, okay, I can do this another day. I don't feel that uncomfortable. And I went a second day. And then the second day became another day after that. And then it became a week. And then 2 weeks and a month. And it just kept going where I don't feel uncomfortable anymore. I had to push myself, but I did it one step at a time. I
Yeah, yeah.
said, let me take it one day. And if I can make that one day, then I can try another. And then I just kept trying. And now it's a routine. It feels weird if I'm not going to the gym.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say that. Yeah, the uncomfort
Yeah.
is now because you're not in the.
Yes. Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's talk about prior to joining the Elite Self program. Talk to me about what your long-term goals were at that point, and then short-term goals.
Right. So I think long term for me, um, professionally, it was to make sure I, um, you know, put myself in the career I wanted, and I was building something that was meaningful in some way. And I feel like I've done that. With my personal life, it's always been, what are the things that are going to make me happy? And for a while, it was just saying that, and I didn't really have tangible goals to go along with that.
Mm.
But I think last year specifically, one of those goals that I started to really, really, you know, kick around is my health. I felt slow. I felt sluggish. I felt, like no energy.
Mm.
And I said, this is not something I want to feel every single day. and there's not a lot of good that can probably come from this, feeling this way every single day. And I didn't necessarily know the best way to make changes for that, but I said, let's make this your long-term goal. Let's figure out how to, focus on your health. And short-term goals, I wanted to lose weight, I wanted to do that. And then my next kind of short-term goal, my next milestone was, I don't want to be on all this medicine that I have to be on and things like that. So that's what it was as of last year. Before that, the focus was always probably weight, because I felt uncomfortable about that. But now it's kind of evolved past just, okay, yeah, I want to lose some weight. Even to where now I have another goal where I want to become stronger in the gym, so it's even changed as I've started the program.
Yeah.
I still want to get off the meds, still want to lose some weight, but I want to get stronger. I feel stronger, week over week with what I'm doing. And I just want to keep building that.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and you said in the beginning, like the short-term goal was to lose a little bit of weight. So
Yes.
right now, so far you lost in total 12.5 pounds. So
Yes.
I would say your short-term goal has been achieved.
Yep, definitely.
Nice. That's cool, man. Great. Congratulations. It's all because of your hard work, your determination, and your consistency, and obviously having a plan. So that's great. Let's talk a little bit about what the program in totality, so like Elite Self and my coaching, skills and abilities and assistance. What did it teach you? What's the biggest thing it taught you?
I think the biggest thing I've learned, because you've taught me a lot about how to use the equipment properly, how best to handle reps, and that the rest periods in between are as important as the workout itself. That there's a lot I learned from those things I just didn't know. But what I think I've learned the most is that, little actions build up and become a much bigger result
Yeah.
than just trying to go from 0 to 100, and that's what I think I went into this mindset with maybe I could just go 0 to 100 right away and lose 20 pounds in a month, and maybe we could have done that. But what you've shown me is a way to do it that's sustainable, and you feel the success of what you're doing, and that just keeps building the momentum. And I think that's been the most important thing I've learned, that not every day has to be perfect or feel perfect, but to just try a little bit more each time. You told me that the progressive overload each time, up the weight a little bit more, push yourself a little bit more, and those have made really big changes for me, just in terms of my energy, how I feel, how I look, confidence, all of those things. It's been huge.
Nice, nice. I'm so happy for you, man. This is my dream as a coach, to hear all these things come out from a client's perspective. So I'm super proud of you. It's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
let's say look, this is my pleasure. This what makes me wake up early in the morning to serve clients, to change lives. So I'm so happy, like, you're on the way, man. It's great. Let's go to the next one. What led you to invest in a program like this? So at first, everybody thinks about it, but then they don't actually do it. So what kind of made you realize that you rather invest rather than doing it on your own?
I think because there is so much information out there, but there's also a lot of misinformation as well.
Mm,
And it's hard when you're doing it on your own, especially with no background or formal education in it, that, it's easy to not be able to decipher what's misinformation and what's actually valuable to you. And again, it's kind of an individual journey per person. So for me, trying to figure out what was the best thing for me to do was difficult, because I've tried some things on my own. I've tried both on the nutrition side of the house and fitness side. And again, I struggled. It was things that didn't work for me or weren't sustainable. And I think what drew me to the program was a lot of the things where, the building blocks are not just around the nutrition and fitness, it's around the person as a whole. And I said,
Mhm.
that's a good way to look at it, because all of those things feed into each other. So how your mentality is, how you're feeling that day, your energy level, the amount of sleep you get, the amount of water you drink, everything is so tied together. But again, I didn't know how to figure that out on my own. And I wanted a plan because I knew I needed a plan. That's how I am at work, how I am in my personal life. If I'm going to achieve a goal, I have to put a plan in place. So I said I needed help. And I've, in the past worked with a trainer, and, he was good and everything, but again, not sticking to it. COVID happened, that fell off. And there's so many different influencers online. um, it was hard to figure out what was the right program to pick. But
Mhm.
this really resonated with me because again, you're looking at me as a whole person, not just, okay, we need to make a fitness plan for you and a nutrition plan for you. So we're taking into account all of those things, and that I felt was going to help me progress. And I mean, the results speak for itself. I've had a lot of success in what I've been doing.
Nice, nice. That's amazing. Yep. Great stuff, man. So, if you were to advise somebody on the fence about investing in their health and fitness, what would you say to them?
Yeah, definitely, because I was on the fence too. Um, do your research, but one thing I can recommend, especially about this program, is it is tailored to you as an individual. And that is huge because not everyone has access to the same gyms or workout equipment. Not everyone has the same level of mobility. Not everyone has the same level of uh, you know, understanding of nutrition, um, or even the same health. Like I have diabetes, and a lot of the tips and tools you've given me have been tailored to that. Taking all of that into account. And I think that's huge because, especially for people with things like diabetes or high cholesterol, hypertension, all of those things, you have to take that into account when you're picking your workout programs and your nutrition plans. um, and that is something I can't speak highly enough of with Elite Self. You tailor it in a way that it makes it achievable, even if you're faced with a ton of challenges. If whether you have pain or whether you have an illness or whether you have a crazy work schedule and you only have time to work out at night or work out, at 3 a.m. Um, you guys make it so that it could be possible for anybody to see success.
Nice,
So
nice.
definitely recommend Elite Self.
That's awesome, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to have the qualities like Anthony does.
Yes.
Consistent, willing to try new things, willing to be uncomfortable, and just having support, being coachable.
Absolutely.
Being coachable is one of the biggest things too. Yeah. And you have all that, so it's awesome. That's why you're like a great client for me. So how was the experience, and was there any main differences about the level of service in a whole?
I think the main difference was the amount of time you spend checking in. It's not just something you do to cross off a list. When we meet and discuss like the results of the week, we're actually diving into the specifics of how the week went. And when I say, this week was rough on me, you say, let's talk through that. Why was it rough for you? What happened? You take all of that into account. And I think that is huge. That's a big value add. I think that that alone makes it easy because again, the plan is there and I have that now. And sure, I could be just using that and have no communication with you. But again, this is helping me make sure I'm still moving the needle in the right direction. And it's been huge because the not every week will be awesome. You're saying I stick to it. I'm consistent. You've been saying that to me this entire time. And I have to be honest, it's not always easy to be consistent. There's mornings I wake up and I'm like, I have to roll myself out of bed because it's, you had a rough day the day before or something. But the
Mhm.
minute I get myself in my routine and then get to the gym, everything just clicks. You lock in, and that is what makes it easier and easier to do, is being able to just stick to your routine and knowing that it's not always going to be easy and you're not going to always do it perfectly. But if you keep just giving a little bit, giving it a little bit more of whatever you have left,
Yeah.
if you have 10% left, give 5, at least at a
Yeah.
minimum,
Yeah.
um, it really does make a difference. And that's why I think this has been better than some of the other things that I've done in the past, better than some of the other programs I've worked on or looked at. It's made a big difference.
That's cool, man. Yeah. And let's I want to unpack that a little bit more as well. When you said there are some mornings you don't feel like getting off of bed. So what would you say is the biggest thing that you do, whether it's being thought, emotion, self-talk, action, whatever it could be, what gets you to what do you do in order to make sure that you're on routine?
Yeah. So it's actually something you've taught me, that it was a suggestion, and I've heard these suggestions before, but you said really try it. So I said, okay, I'll do that. And it was to kind of have your morning gratitude, and I'll sit there. I like meditation, and that's something I've built into my schedule as well. But as soon as I wake up, that's something I'll do. I'll kind of sit there, I'll meditate for a bit. I'll think of 3 things I'm really grateful for that day, and that has really kind of set the tone then for me to say, okay, I'm ready to lock in. I'm ready to go tackle the day, get my workout in. Because again, if I don't finish that workout, the morning doesn't feel right.
Mm,
So, but
mm,
that has been a dramatic shift because again, your day before, a lot of things happen and it's not always going to be, perfect. So sometimes motivation might feel a little low, but that gratitude builds, builds momentum in a way.
yeah,
You
yeah.
feel better after you think about those things that you're grateful for, and I do that at the end of the night too, because you have, it's like a reset on both sides. It's a reset at night and then a reset in the morning, and it really has helped to change the mindset when you wake up.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And now, what is on the further, so in the future, to your next elite self? What is the big picture?
Big picture, I definitely am gonna be off medication. Not I want to be,
Oh
I'm definitely getting off that
yeah.
medication.
Yes.
I'm definitely going to lose more weight, but I want to be a stronger version of myself. I keep we're changing up my routines, my fitness plans, and I keep trying more difficult things because that's what I want. I want to be challenged, you know, each time I'm in the gym. I want to be challenged in everything I do, really, because that's how I've found growth, not just personally and professionally, but through this as well. The more I challenge myself, the more growth that I find. So I just want to keep pushing that. I want to go to the next level. I want to feel strong. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll run a marathon, which is something I'd never say about myself 2 years ago,
Oh, why not? Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like this opens up so many doors that, I felt weren't open to me before.
Hmm. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And going back to what you were just saying about getting to a marathon maybe in the future,
Yeah.
or probably definitely, because now it's about stacking those goals as well, right? So once you get to a certain point, you could maintain for a little bit, but it's really important for to set another goal so that you progress. because I've heard of a saying once before, and I kind of agree, is when you're just maintaining, there's more regression than progression.
Yeah.
Right. So you
Yep.
got to be careful with that. And just to end on an awesome note, I took some notes of, the whole journey we've been through together as client and coach. And I just want to recap. Okay. So in December 2024, so 5 months ago, you were at 239 pounds. Okay. And then you were in the state you were mentioning in the
Yep.
beginning. And then through April, until April 2025, so this right now, you've lost 12 pounds, 12.5 to be exact. You're sitting at 226.5 pounds. So the journey was December to January. What we did with your plan was a whole metabolic recalibration, right? So you
Yep.
remember I gave you some tasks to do, some habits to make sure that happens, especially with your nutrition. And then from there, we went January to February. We started with more workouts and eating properly at a specific amount of calories. Okay. And then from there, February to now, to April, you've been keeping that consistent. And February and April were the months where you were losing consistently 1 pound a week. And now we're here.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, man. It's a great
It's
journey.
crazy.
I can't wait to see what's going to come in the future. And then within the next 2 months, you're going to be off of the medication. I'm 100% sure
Absolutely.
about that. So yeah, that was Anthony. And thank you so much for joining the interview to hopefully inspire others to take the same route of a healthy lifestyle for themselves. And not only for themselves, when you do this for yourself, you can pour into other people in your life.
Absolutely.